The web exploded with discussions and debate about 11 UC Davis students who were doused with pepper spray during a peaceful Occupy protest against tuition increases. There have been nearly 130,000 social mentions since the incident, and the UC Davis Faculty Association is calling for the chancellor's resignation, and the 2 police officers and the police chief have been put on leave. Now, does this seem like an extreme response, Dave?
Yeah, I think that's Agent Orange that they're spraying on them. Maybe they had some foliage on their clothes, and that's what they were doing. They were trying to get that off.
Yeah, no, I think it was really highly inappropriate. I mean, there was no violence, there was no threat. You know, I understand that they were doing their jobs, but when there's no, threat of harm to the police, I think it's really an overuse.
And obviously, this guy doesn't see that everyone has a camera around him.
That was something I didn't understand. I was like,
that.
wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that they're that about their actions.
Just brazen about it.
They're just going to do it, knowing that it's going to be covered and reported by everyone. And this has really brought the new citizen journalism to light, I think. We all know that people have their cameras and are shooting everything, but we're seeing it more. So we saw it in Syria, we saw it in Egypt, but being it happening closer to home is just so powerful.
Yeah,
Don't you think?
I think that people don't expect, with the Occupy Wall Street movement and all this kind of stuff, there's a lot of protests going on, and I think my generation especially, we weren't around for the Kent State stuff. We weren't around for that sort of violence against protesting, and we really haven't had anything to protest, in our lifetime that's been as big as this.
Yeah.
And so when this kind of stuff happens, I think it's such a shock to our generation that, like, how does this happen?
Our generation, speaking of our generation, are taking to the social web in a different kind of way. There's this photo meme that's been spreading, featuring this officer right here, Officer John Pike, nonchalantly spraying people, in photos and iconic photographs and paintings.
I would actually like that painting for my house.
It is a piece of art.
Nice.
But it's really brought people together around the movement. If people were fatigued, this has re-energized it in many ways online.
Looking at his face, it looks like he's gotten some of the pepper spray on his own mustache.
He's
if you look at
coordinated, like the two of you.
He is. And Megyn Kelly, did you hear this? The Fox host Megyn Kelly said, "Oh yeah, it's just pepper spray. It's basically like food."
Yeah, right.
Obviously, she's never been pepper sprayed.
And now, that hashtag is going around. People are saying, stoning, oh, it's like playing dodgeball.
She just said that because pizza is now a vegetable. That's why she said that.
That's what our country has come down to. Well, joining us now via Skype is a UC Davis assistant professor who wrote an open letter calling for the chancellor's resignation, Nathan Brown. That is spread everywhere around the web. I know you've been inundated the past 24 hours, I would say, since that went up. Thank you so much for joining us, Nathan.
Thanks so much for having me on the show.
So what inspired you to write the post?
Well, I've been involved in the UC student movement since the fall of 2009. I've been struggling with, the people who were pepper sprayed. I know them. One of my colleagues was there acting as a medic. I immediately received phone calls from these people giving me their testimony of what happened. And as we can all see, it's absolutely horrifying, and there's a really brazen disregard for the lives of our students by chancellors in the UC system sending in riot police to disperse peaceful protests in this way, and someone has to be called to account for it.
Yeah, so were you surprised by the police's presence and what they actually did?
I mean, certainly it should be surprising that riot police would be called in to suppress a peaceful demonstration in that way, but it's not surprising because it's been happening systematically across UC campuses for the past 2 years. In November of 2009, hundreds of riot police were called to UC Berkeley during an occupation of Wheeler Hall. They beat students on the ground at that demonstration. There were, many calls for the resignation of the Berkeley chancellor then, Chancellor Bergeneau, and for an end to this sort of policing on our campuses. But these sorts of decisions by chancellors have continued. This sort of police brutality has continued for the past 2 years. So it makes me very sad and very angry that these decisions continue to be made, but unfortunately it's not at all surprising.
So what do you hope comes out of this, you and the students and the community there?
Well, I think that there are a few demands that are particularly important. First of all, I think just as a starting point, it's absolutely crucial that the chancellor accept that she must resign. The Chancellor's decision not to at this point, in the face of calls from the board of the Davis Faculty Association, the departmental webpage of the English department now has a statement up directly on its webpage calling for her resignation at a time when graduate students across the country, are looking at programs to decide where they would like to go to do their doctoral work.
Oh, wow.
The problem at this point is that the Chancellor has very little legitimacy. It's not clear at all that she retains the credibility to advocate for or to lead our
just
campus.
finally, how are police supposed to respond? Because that's the thing. They responded with pepper spray, which has created even more so the backlash. So how are they supposed to respond in that instance?
How are police supposed to respond to demonstrators sitting with their arms linked at a protest? That's a question about what we think about civil disobedience and how we think about whom the law is supposed to protect. In my view, and I think in the view of any reasonable viewer of that video, there is absolutely no reason for those police to touch those demonstrators at all.
Yeah.
The only reason that they have to is because the Chancellor has ordered them to. And in fact, the police have already cleared away the tents of the encampment in that situation, and those are simply people sitting on the ground with their arms linked. There's no reason in the world for the police to touch those demonstrators in any way.
All right, well, Nathan, thank you so much for joining us today. I know the encampments have been set up again, so the fight continues there on campus.
They have, and those students at UC Davis, I think, are an inspiration to thousands of people around the world. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you so much. Now, hundreds of students and faculty members gathered yesterday also to protest the pepper spray incident. UC Davis Chancellor Linda Katei made a brief appearance at the demonstration, telling the crowd, "I'm here to apologize. I feel horrible for what happened."